Hello everyone, FPL Raptor here and welcome back to another video on my YouTube channel. In today's video we have my Game Week 2 team selection where I'll discuss what I'm doing with the likes of Nkunku and Pedro Porro and also discuss future transfer plans as well. If you do enjoy today's video, please do smash that like button, and if you are new around here, make sure to subscribe as well. But without further ado, let's jump into it. So guys, let's review Game Week 1 now that all of my players have played before we take a look at my team selection for Game Week 2. And I finished on 83 points overall, which I'm absolutely delighted with. It's a very, very solid start. But I knew that I almost needed that in Game Week 1, given that I went in with triple Liverpool against Ipswich and Salah captain. I had double Arsenal against Wolves at home. Obviously, I had Isak with a good fixture. I had double Spurs against Leicester away. Like, I set up my team in a way where it looked extremely strong for Game Week 1. And given that the elephant in the room here is that I currently don't own any City assets for their Ipswich at home game in Game Week 2, I knew that I needed almost a bit of a head start because it may go in the complete opposite direction in Game Week 2. So I'm very, very happy with it, but I'm obviously not getting ahead of myself. Where the points came from were those 5 players from Arsenal and Liverpool. They absolutely delivered, and I thought they would do well, but maybe not as well as they did. Obviously, Liverpool, I needed that, right? Salah captain going against Isak. Obviously, Isak captain is very, very unlucky, but for Salah to deliver 14 points was huge. I didn't expect that much from him, probably. Trent just showed why he is absolutely worth the 7 million price tag, and Jota obviously delivering the goal was really, really nice. So the three of them, perfect. And then obviously at 3 p.m. on the Saturday, Gabriel and Saka absolutely smashing it for me and get 18 points there. So that was already enough for me to have a really good game week. There were some disappointments though. Obviously Palace, I thought they were very, very good for the first part of that game, maybe up until the Eze goal, and that obviously threw them. Brentford then scored, and from then I think they struggled a little bit more. But I feel like you could have definitely come away with more points there from the Palace assets. Nkunku was super frustrating as well because we expected him to maybe play a slightly more central role. We definitely expected his minutes to be slightly better. And I know it was against Man City, but they were without Walker, they were without Rodri, and we thought, you know what? Chelsea can definitely get at them. And they did, by the way, but maybe expecting slightly more than 1 point from Nkunku, but you can't have everything. And Spurs on the Monday, this is going to sound crazy, but I feel like I could have potentially had more from that game, given that Solanke had a couple of very good chances, one absolutely massive chance. But I liked what I saw from Solanke. I liked the fact that he stayed on the pitch for the entire game, even after the likes of Heung-min Son came off. And obviously Pedro Porro getting that goal. As long as he's fit, which we'll discuss in a second, I think he's a great asset to own. And he was getting into some ridiculously advanced positions. If you didn't see his goal, he just popped up in the box like he was a centre forward. So overall, I'm absolutely delighted. There are very few things that I regret with this team. In fact, I don't think there's a single pick that I currently regret because we've only had 1 week of information, firstly. But also, I'm just really happy with the structure. And I'm happy I backed myself as well because there were a few points going into Game Week 1. When I was looking at the teams around me, everyone was in a 3-4-3. Everyone seemingly had Haaland, and I was just thinking, oh no, this could be an awful start. And by the way, it probably will be in Game Week 2. But I just wanted to say I'm happy that I backed myself. At least in Game Week 1, it's gone okay. Let's now discuss Game Week 2 and how much I'm going to be in pain if I don't bring in Erling Haaland. So guys, let's now take a look at the team for Game Week 2. My team value is 99.5 and I have 0.5 million in the bank. So no price rises or falls in my team at the moment. I am very happy I left that 0.5 because there was a temptation to do Greaves to a 4.5 defender. Firstly, I'm very happy with Greaves. I think he's probably the best 4 million defender at the moment at least. And also, it's nice to have that flexibility. I don't have Quansah, and I think Quansah owners are very unlucky. But if I did, and I'd left that money in the bank, now that he's dropped to 4.4, I'd still have the option to move him to a 4.5 defender. So I feel like if in the future, in future seasons, or when you play your wild card, you can build a team that has money in the bank and you still like it, don't feel like you always have to spend every penny. And in all honesty, I was very happy with my team. I could be spending that 0.5 very soon, though, and we'll discuss that in a second. So this team is currently rated at 96% according to Fantasy Football Hub. As always, you can still get a free team rating down below. So if you want to see how your team is set up for sort of Game Weeks 2 to Game Week 6, because it's weighted over a 5-game week period, you can check out the link in the description to get that free team rating. Let's start with the goalkeeper. So I have Henderson, and overall, I'm not too displeased with this as a pick. The only concern now is looks like, at the time of me recording, which is early on Thursday morning, it looks like Anderson is off to Fulham. It's been given the here we go from Fabrizio Romano. Yes, he's been wrong in the past, but by all accounts, it looks like Anderson will be joining Fulham. Obviously, Newcastle seem very intent on getting Gay. I now don't think they will. I can't see Palace parting with both Gay and Anderson in a single transfer window. But even just the loss of Anderson, I think, is massive. Some Palace fans, maybe it's a bit of delusion saying, oh, we don't need him, we can replace him. I think he's exceptional. And I think it's going to make Fulham, firstly, so much stronger defensively. But I think that will weaken Palace. Yes, they are bidding for, I think, 2 different centre-backs now. And it looks like they'll get at least one of them. But that still makes them weak defensively. And obviously, if they lose Gay as well, I would be a little bit worried. But I'm probably not planning on keeping Henderson beyond. I reckon I'll probably wildcard within the first 8 game weeks. I'm looking at game week 6. I'm looking at game week 8. And even if they do get a little bit weaker defensively, it might mean more saves for Henderson. And he will still keep clean sheets. So it's one of those where, no, it's not ideal. And maybe if I'd have known that they were going to lose Anderson and maybe Gay, maybe I wouldn't have gone for it. And maybe that was a bit of oversight from me. But as of right now, I'm not particularly stressed. They've got a home fixture this week, and I'm feeling relatively confident that they'll get at least a couple of clean sheets in the first 6 to 8 games. So that's my perspective on it at the moment. I do think that Brentford is just a difficult place to go to and get a result and get a clean sheet as well. So I wasn't necessarily expecting anything too much from Crystal Palace in game week 1 from a clean sheet perspective. Moving on to the defence, I'm really happy with the defence that I chose. Obviously, I decided to go from Gvardiol to Porro at the last second. Porro did outscore Gvardiol in game week 1, but now might prove an issue in game week 2. And obviously, I would probably prefer to have Gvardiol against Ipswich. So for 0.5 saving, I'm pretty happy that I made the switch, but obviously I would really like Pedro Porro to be fit. We'll discuss him in a second. Trent Alexander-Arnold, I would go as far as saying might be the best asset in the game for me. From what we saw in game week 1, I had a feeling that under Arnie's slot, he might be unbelievable, and it's kind of what we saw. The first half didn't do that much. He was dropping a little bit deeper, playing these sort of like quarterback passes where he was spraying them wide. But in the second half, he had this just incision about his passes, and he created so many chances. He had exactly 1 expected assist, apart from Maddison, who I think had like 0.97. Great performance by him, by the way. The next closest after that was Minte with 0.65, and then after that, there were no players above 0.5 expected assists. Obviously, it's only 1 game week, but that is a ridiculous number and quality of chances to create from Trent. So I truly think Trent he's not essential, no player is, but I think he's as close as you're going to get. And I would argue, based on what we saw in game week 1, like I said, he may well be the best asset in the game for me at 7 million. So delighted to have him, and I'm glad I didn't choose the Trent spot to sacrifice in my team to spread the funds elsewhere. So very happy to have him. Gabriel's an interesting one, right? Because I chose an Arsenal defender full well knowing they had Villa away, Spurs away, and City away in the first 5. And so I can't sit here and say, well, I don't really like the fixture, but obviously it's not an ideal fixture. I will just say, Villa were impressive at points in that game, but they also looked a little bit rusty. They've not looked great during pre-season. So there is absolutely a possibility, by the way, that Villa struggle in this game and Arsenal cruise to a 1 or 2-0 win. But based on what we saw last season, Villa are a bit of a bogey team for Arsenal. I will just say Arsenal are traditionally slightly better defensively away from home because they set up in a slightly more pragmatic manner. And I just think that given that Unai Emery did do the double over Arteta last season, Arteta is going to get, and I'm not saying this is enough of a reason for them to get a clean sheet, but he's going to give it absolutely everything to try and control and dominate this game. And so I still think that a clean sheet is highly possible, well, not highly possible, but at least possible for Arsenal. And Arsenal defence, I feel like you shouldn't pick and choose when you play an Arsenal defender. And I'm telling myself this because I may be in a position, if Pedro Porro is fit, where I have to decide who to start between Gabriel and Robinson. I feel like you should just play your Arsenal defender every week, given that they kept so many clean sheets last year. They looked great once again in game week 1. And sometimes these trickier games on paper are the ones we expect to be a little bit cagier, and a clean sheet is absolutely possible. So I'm not necessarily expecting a clean sheet from Gabriel, but I do want to start him because I think one of the benefits of the team that I've gone with and having no Haaland is that I was able to squeeze an Arsenal defender in. I've seen a lot of Haaland drafts that don't have that Arsenal defender. So I feel like if that's one of my major advantages, I should probably try to stick him in my team. So Gabriel's in there for now. And as I said, I've got Pedro Porro. Now, I'm recording this early on Thursday. As of right now, I don't have an update on Pedro Porro. But once I do get one, I'll discuss in Friday's video and also on Saturday's deadline stream exactly what my plan is. Just to cover the 2 possibilities. If he is fine and fit and available, he will absolutely be starting for me. Everton looked really shaky in game week 1. Pedro Porro looked exceptionally good from an attacking perspective. We spoke about the fact that they won't keep many clean sheets if they defend like they did last year. And they gave up a lot of chances in that second half to Leicester. So I don't own him for the clean sheets, as cliche as that is as a saying. I own him for the attacking threat, and he's playing like an attacker. The only slight worrying concern was Porro didn't take any set pieces in that game. Previously last season, when Maddison came back into the team, Porro shared set pieces with Maddison. As of right now, it looks like he's off set pieces, and most of his assists last season came from corners and set pieces. So I am slightly concerned that his assist threat will be down based on the fact that he's not on set pieces. However, he looks to be, based on Game Week 1, even more attacking than he was last season. So maybe it'll equal out, but as of right now, that's a slight concern for me that he's not on at least a few of the set pieces. Maybe from Game Week 2 onwards, we'll start to see him take a few more. I'm not really sure. So if he's fit and available, he'll absolutely be in my starting 11. If he's not fit and available, I guess it depends on how long he's injured for. I would just say that after the game, he was seen taking pictures and walking on it. There was no real notable swelling on his ankle, which he rolled. By the way, if you're wondering what the injury is, looks like he rolled his ankle. There was no notable swelling. He wasn't wearing an ice pack or anything like that. There was no strapping. He wasn't in a boot. We've seen often quite players, even when it's not a serious injury, they're straight into an air boot. They've got ice on their ankle. None of that appeared to be the case after the match for Pedro Porro. So I'm hopeful. But if he is out, and maybe it's short term, I've got Anthony Robinson on the bench. And to be honest, that solves a benching headache. Because if all of my defenders were fit and available, I was basically deciding between Gabriel and Robinson who to start. If he's out long-term, Porro, though, I do have a decision to make. Because after Everton, it's Newcastle and Arsenal. Yes, he might then be back for the Brentford game. But do I potentially just look to move him to someone like a Gavardio or Rico Lewis? I've got 0.5 in the bank, so I can afford any Man City defender that I want. Then I would have a little bit of City cover. I would have a City defender against Ipswich, West Ham and Brentford, I think, are their next set of fixtures. So that looks really good to me as an option. But then I would still be probably benching one of Gabriel or Robinson, and like bringing in a City defender just to bench another very good defender probably doesn't feel like the best use of my transfer. So I know my thinking's a little bit muddled at the moment, but I guess what I'm saying is I've got 3 really good defenders this week, even if Porro's not available. So my opinion at the moment is if Porro is out, it will be Trent, Gabriel and Robinson as my back 3. He'll come in off the bench. Leicester at home. He had 6 assists last season. I think he had the 3rd highest expected goal involvement in Game Week 1 out of all defenders. Lots of touches in the final third. He just looked really promising. Now, Fulham's defence didn't look particularly good, but if Anderson comes in, I definitely think that will strengthen them, because I think Calvin Bassey in particular looked a little bit shaky at the back. Diop, I think, is a great defender, so I think it will be Diop and Anderson, but if it's Anderson and Bassey, I still think it's stronger having Anderson in there. So I'm really happy to play Robinson this week. If Porro's available, my help that I need from you, who would you start out of Gabriel and Robinson? I'd love to know down below. I'm seeing a lot of differing opinions. I'm really not sure where I stand at the moment. As I said, my brain is telling me just play Gabriel, because Arsenal defence is so good. You can't decide when you're going to play them. They'll get clean sheets regardless. But then I feel like my heart and my gut is telling me Robinson's got a higher upside. He's got a better fixture, more attacking threat, better for bonus points. The only thing he doesn't have as much is obviously Fulham aren't a particularly good defence. So I would love to know, like I said, if Porro's fit, who would you start? If Porro's out, then it'll be nice and easy for me. I don't think at the moment I plan on making a defender transfer, but just in case he's out long term or I change my mind, in the final section I'll be looking at my current transfer plans and my watch list, and there are a few defenders that I am potentially tempted to move to. So that's the defence. Let's move on to the midfield. So moving on to the midfield, and we'll start with my double Liverpool attack, which finishes off obviously my triple Liverpool with Salah and Jota. Absolutely delighted with how they performed in Game Week 1. Fully aware that that won't be the case every single week, and that this week, having double Liverpool attack, whilst it's amazing, it's obviously at the sacrifice of Haaland, and I would absolutely rather own Haaland this week. If you're asking me who is a better captain out of Salah and Haaland, the very, very, very clear and obvious answer is Haaland as well. So whilst my armband is on Salah, and I'm about to tell you that I'm happy with that, I certainly don't look at it and think that he is the best captain. If I could captain anyone, I would absolutely have the armband on the Norwegian. But Salah against Brentford at home, it's not like Haaland's got Ipswich at home and Salah's playing like, I don't know, Spurs away, although that wouldn't maybe be the worst fixture. This is a good fixture. It's at Anfield. We know that Liverpool and Salah traditionally have been a lot better at Anfield. If that's the case under Slot, we'll have to wait and see, but you would expect it to be so. And they had the most shots in the box in Game Week 1. They had the most big chances in Game Week 1 as well. And that may well be due to Ipswich giving up chances, which favours Haaland. But I still expect Liverpool's attack to be very strong this season. And whilst I am absolutely fearful and scared of Haaland, by the way, if you want to know, it's awful not owning him from a psychological and fear perspective, I still don't think Salah is a bad alternative captain. So if you're sat there like me, without Haaland in your team, and you have to captain Salah, it's not like, oh, I really don't want it. It's fine. And in a given week, Could you see Salah scoring more goals against Brentford than Haaland does against Ipswich? You could definitely see it. I don't think it's likely, but it's absolutely possible. So, yeah, we're betting against the masses. We're betting against what is statistically more likely. But all you need is a little bit of luck on your side, and Salah could do very well. So I am happy with him. And I think Jota was exceptionally strong in Game Week 1. In fact, I would argue he was probably Liverpool's best player for me. He had a header from about 3 yards out, which in all honesty, I'm surprised he missed because he's so good in the air. But he could have been coming away with a brace and an assist. He just looked really, really strong. And what I loved, and I spoke about this in the transfer plans video, when it was Jota's time to come off, it wasn't Darwin that came on, because our worry was that Darwin might be favoured as the 9. Darwin got 0 minutes. It was actually Gakpo that came on. And we've now heard from both Gakpo and Slot that Gakpo is more likely to be favoured on the left side or on the left wing. So I think longer term, the fact that Darwin didn't come on, the fact that Gakpo was the one that came on for Jota, means that Jota's minutes are relatively secure. And he got more minutes than I thought he would in Game Week 1. So Salah, Jota, Trent is probably the thing that I'm happiest about with my team. And I'm hoping that over these upcoming fixtures, I'm going to be in a really strong position. I also think, I mean, you can plan ahead and look at your own team, by the way. Check out Fantasy Football Hub down below if you want to plan ahead. I think by Game Week 4 or 5, everyone's going to want to own Salah. In fact, in Game Week 5, I'm pretty confident that he's the best captaincy option. City play against Arsenal, and outside of that, I don't think there are many reliable captains. I think Newcastle have Fulham, if I remember correctly, so that's a possible option for you. But Salah's got Bournemouth at home, so he stands out to me as the best captain that week. So I think a lot of people might be looking at how they can get Salah in their team. So I might even be, by then, this is so much copium for not owning Haaland, I might by then be a couple of transfers ahead. So I think what I'm saying is, yeah, I'd love to own Haaland, but I'm happy with my triple Liverpool. Saka I'm very happy with. I know he's got Villa away, but my word, what a performance in Game Week 1. Ignore stats, ignore FPL, everything went through him. I would say he's getting to a stage now where he is almost, and this is no disrespect to Ødegaard. Ødegaard is a fantastic footballer, but he almost feels like he could be even more important to that team. Even though he's playing out wide on the right, he's so talismanic and he drives the team forward, and they just try to find him and give him the ball. And he creates so much for that team. So Saka, for me, delighted I chose him for Game Week 1, and he's absolutely going. No, I don't care about the tough fixtures. I think he's the best premium midfielder outside of Salah. So those three really happy with. Eze, I thought, was so unfortunate in Game Week 1 not to get more. And I think West Ham at home is a fine fixture. Villa had their chances, and I would expect Eze to get some again. And I'm hoping that we get a little bit of luck in Game Week 2, given how unlucky he was in Game Week 1. There are still some slight concerns that he might be off to City. The rumours haven't completely died down, but that release clause of 60 million, the ability to activate that release clause is now gone, apparently, according to journalists. So if they want to get Eze, they have to buy him. And given that they've just lost Anderson and Newcastle are after Gay, I think City would have to put forward a hell of a lot of money to get Eze, probably above and beyond that 60 million price tag. So I'm feeling more and more confident at the moment that Eze stays. And I really like the next few fixtures. West Ham, Chelsea, Leicester, United. It's not a bad set of fixtures. And I'll maybe reassess just after that Leicester game in about Game Week 5 if I want to keep him long term. The only midfielder that I am slightly worried about is Nkunku. So Chelsea play, I'll just bring it up here. So Chelsea play at 8 p.m. today, which is Thursday, UK time, in the Europa Conference League playoff. Now, I don't know what I want or what I expect from Chelsea and how many minutes I want or expect from Nkunku. But I guess if Chelsea put out what looks like a bit of a rotated B team, there are lots of players being rotated, and Nkunku starts in that and gets tons of minutes, I would feel slightly worried about his minutes and likelihood of starting in Game Week 2. However, if Chelsea put out their strongest 11 and Nkunku plays 60 minutes, starts the game, comes off a bit early, I know you might think in your head that just further reinforces that he's a minutes issue. But for me, that means he's still in their first choice 11, which I do highly expect, by the way. He's still getting minutes, but he's not being absolutely run ragged on a Thursday ahead of the weekend of football. But I guess it depends. You could frame it anyway. If he's rested altogether, you could frame that as, oh, he's got a rest, or you could frame it as, oh, he's been dropped. So I feel like it depends on whether you want to sell him, whether you want to keep him, and how you frame it. But let's see how many minutes he gets on Thursday. Let's see what kind of squad Chelsea put out, and let's see what position he plays as well. And I think that will tell us a little bit. But as I've spoken about throughout the week, I don't expect Chelsea to line up with Enzo, Lavia, and Caicedo in every single game. Those are three relatively defensive midfielders. I think it will probably be Caicedo and Enzo, and it might be Lavia that drops out, or it will be Lavia and Caicedo and Enzo that drops out. But I think they'll play two of them, which leaves that number 10 spot. Now, that could be Nkunku, If the João Felix transfer fully goes through, it could be João Felix, it could be Keane and Dewsbury Hall, it could be Cole Palmer. They've got a few options there. It's not just a dead cert that Nkunku goes straight into the 10. But also, if it is João Felix in the 10 or Kieran Dewsbury Hall, then he could play Nkunku as the 9. Or he could continue to play him off the left, but start him in most games. So I guess there's a lot of uncertainty, and that might be enough for you to remove him. And I have toyed with the idea of removing Nkunku, and we'll discuss in a second who I might be looking at. But I feel like I need to give him one more week. Let's see what happens tonight in the football, but I feel like I need to give him one more week. I want to give him that Wolves game. It's not a great fixture, by the way, but I expect Chelsea to get chances, and I think we'll get a bit more of an idea about what we're expecting from Nkunku as an asset. But yeah, I have toyed with the idea, absolutely, of removing him. We'll discuss in a second who for. And for game week 3, he's definitely on the chopping block if he doesn't perform once again. But for now, I'm pretty happy with that midfield. The only notable omission, I would say, for me, I mean, there are various notable omissions, but it's probably, I don't have Smith Rowe, who a lot of people will have, and I think he's fantastic. And also, I don't have any City midfielders, so no KDB, Foden, Doku, Bernardo Silva. And I could bring some of them in, but I'm pretty happy with the midfield 5 I've got. They performed okay for me in game week 1. Hopefully, they can repeat in game week 2. So guys, if you are enjoying today's video and you want to follow my team throughout the season, please do consider subscribing. I would really appreciate it. Just while you're listening, go down, hit that subscribe button. It means a lot to me and it really does help. And hopefully you can see why this team, something which I pride myself on, is thinking for myself and not following the template for the sake of it. At points, I will absolutely have a template team, by the way, but I will never do it just for the sake of ownership or because other people are. And you will see throughout the weeks and throughout the months that there will be some very different picks in my team because I've identified something and I will usually follow that through. So if that sounds good to you, please hit that like button and please make sure to subscribe. But moving on to the front 2, I'm very happy with it. There are absolutely no forwards in the game. I would obviously love to own Haaland. We'll discuss that in a second in a bit more detail. But Solanke and Isak are absolutely fine. Solanke, I think, was very, very unlucky not to come away with more. Or you could say poor finishing. He missed a couple of chances. But I was very optimistic based on what I saw in game week 1. I loved how many minutes he got. I actually think, and I've seen a few other people say this as well, he might be the new talisman for Spurs. I think he is that good. At Bournemouth, I always felt like he's not just a goal scorer. I think Solanke is incredibly disrespected when people just say he's just a poacher. He has the ability to hold up the ball. He's got really nice dribbling ability as well. He can link up play. He's obviously no Harry Kane, but I think he himself could be the talisman for Spurs this year rather than Heung-min Son, because Son came off a little bit early. It was only like the 89th minute, but they're chasing a goal. They're trying to win that game. And for Solanke to stay on for me looked very good. And he got chances. And I think Pedro Porro assisting to Solanke, that could absolutely happen a couple of times this season. If Maddison can keep up those level of performances as well, that is amazing news for Solanke too. So I'm happy having him. As I said, Everton were really disappointing in game week 1. They looked a little bit shaky. They've also lost 2 of their starting defenders as well. Looks like they might have to play Mason Holgate and Michael Keane, which isn't a particularly good defence. So I'm hopeful Solanke could get on the score sheet. Very happy to have him. And Isak, we can't really analyse that game. I do think Newcastle started the game very poorly, but you could argue that Liverpool weren't very good in the first half against Ipswich. So maybe it would have been that in the second half with 11 men, Newcastle could have put 3 or 4 goals past Southampton. Slight disrespect to Southampton there because I thought they were very good, but you just never know in football. So we can sit here and say that Newcastle weren't great, and that's a little bit of a worry for Isak, but it's difficult to analyse overall. So I think once they've got 11 men, Isak will be absolutely great. I don't think Newcastle are as great away from home, and I also think that Bournemouth isn't a particularly good fixture, but I'm absolutely happy having Isak. Isak hasn't gone. I said in game week 1, he's like the most essential player in the game. He hasn't gone from that to a terrible option just because Fabian Schär got sent off. So really happy to have him. But I think overall, when you look at my team, it looks really strong. It really does. And I say only because there is only one thing, but it's a massive thing. I don't have Erling Haaland. And I knew this going into game week 2, that lots of people would be captaining. I didn't realize how many people would consider triple captaining him, which is crazy. I don't think I've ever gone in my life into an FPL game week. And I run a poll on Twitter. 15 to 20% of people are looking at triple captaining him. I've never in my life gone into a game week where I don't even own a player that almost a fifth of the game are considering triple captaining. It's crazy. So it's very scary. But funnier things have happened in football than Haaland only scoring 1 or 2 goals against Ipswich. And if Haaland only gets 2 goals, you might laugh at me. I'm okay with that, because what that is 26 points. Salah got me 28 in game week 1. I'm already 20 to 25 points ahead of a lot of Haaland drafts that I've seen. So if Haaland goes out there and gets a brace, I can absolutely live with that, especially if that's assuming that Salah doesn't do much. If Salah gets a goal or an assist and some bonus, and he can get me I don't know, 18 to 20 points with captaincy, I've not really lost out on too much there. And the other players can then make up the score once again. The only, the worst case scenario would be Haaland gets 3+ returns and Salah blanks. And that is absolutely feasible. If that happens, I'm in big trouble. Because at that point, Haaland's getting you 30+ points with captaincy and Salah's getting me 4. That's a humongous swing at that stage. And I would really need my surrounding players like Solanke and Jota and Trent to do very, very well. But as of right now, I'm scared, but I'm hopeful that Salah can get close-ish to Haaland, and I'm hopeful that Ipswich can stop Haaland from scoring more than 2. I think that 2-goal, 13 to 15-point range is where if he gets much more than that, it's a big disaster. If he gets less than that, or that amount, I'm absolutely fine with that because it's not just one game week. Game week 1 went well, game week 2 can go poorly, but then from game week 3 onwards, it's equal game, right? So I'm feeling pretty good right now. But obviously, let me know down below how much you think I'm going to regret saying that. And let me know down below if you don't have Haaland, are you considering potentially bringing him in? I wouldn't break your team. I wouldn't be free hitting just to get him. I would just accept that you've not got the best captain this week and hope that the FPL gods treat you fairly. Let's now take a look at my possible transfers very briefly and also my AI recommended transfers as well. So guys, very briefly, because as I said, I am currently planning to roll my transfer in Game Week 2. Here are some possible transfers that I might start to lean towards as we get closer to the deadline, depending upon PORRO's injury update and then Nkunku's minutes in that Europa Conference League playoff game. So 3 of my options revolve around removing Pedro Porro. And I think the 3 main options for me at the moment is Josko Gvardiol, who for me is probably the best defender that I don't currently own. And if I actually switch straight over to Fantasy Football Hub to show you this, the AI recommended transfer for this week, if I don't bank my free transfer, which is what they recommend, is to do Porro to Gvardiol. It's weighted across 5 game weeks, and Gvardiol just about comes out on top. Obviously, if Pedro Porro is injured, I could, like I say, play Robinson, or I could just be tempted to make that move because it is an upgrade and it would give me some City coverage for that Ipswich game. So I like that as a possibility. If it's not Gvardiol, though, it could be Rico Lewis. That would save me $1 million, and that would give me 1.5 million in the bank, which would be really nice moving forward. I'd have a lot of flexibility there. But Rico Lewis does feel like a relatively short-term punt for me. And then the only other option is Colwill. I think Colwill will be the most nailed Chelsea defender. I actually think defensively they were pretty good against City. They limited them to less than 1 XG. Overall, you've got to say that's a pretty impressive performance for the Chelsea defence. And I think that Maresca will set them up in a slightly more structured way than we saw under Pochettino. So Colwill at 4.5 with the decent upcoming fixtures, he could be an okay shout, but Porro to Colwill doesn't feel like a great use of my first free transfer. And like I said, I don't really need to make the move this week, as long as Robinson, Gabriel and Trent are absolutely fine and there are no issues with those. The only other option is remove Nkunku. If he gets loads of minutes in the B team, plays 90, or if he gets injured in that game, I think Nkunku to Smith Rowe feels good because, again, that gives me $1 million, plus my 0.5 I've already got. I would have 1.5 million in the bank, and arguably, I would probably prefer to have Smith Rowe to Nkunku this week. So it is absolutely a possibility to do, but I would only do that if I was really worried about his minutes this weekend. Otherwise, I'll probably just keep. Other players that are on my watch list defensively, I think Munoz is great, but maybe now that Anderson's left, we want to reassess how good the Palace defence are going to be. Mazraoui, I thought, was very impressive. Good for bonus points, but didn't carry that much attacking threat. Dunk from game week 4 onwards is absolutely on my watch list, but for now, with 2 not particularly good fixtures defensively coming up, I'd rather not go there. And I think Lewis Hall will play a lot of minutes now, given that Fabian Schär's out for 2 Premier League games plus the domestic game. And also, I just think he's first choice left back as well. He'll carry some attacking threat. But I just don't feel the need to do Porro to Hall. I think I'd rather go for a City defender or Colwill at the moment. Midfield-wise, Mbeumo and Matoma are absolutely on my watch list, but more from game week sort of 3 onwards for Mbeumo, but maybe game week 4 onwards for Matoma. So whilst I'm thinking about both of them, I don't think this is a week that I would want to bring them in. And of course, Foden, Doku, Bernardo Silva, I would love a City attacker, but I don't really want to remove Saka, which I'd have to do to get Foden or KDB. And whilst Nkunku to Doku or Bernardo Silva would be tempting, I think I'd rather go for the safety with Smith Rowe. And also, I kind of overall prefer the next 2 fixtures for Smith Rowe than I do for Foden and Doku. So, yeah, I would probably prefer to bring in a Fulham midfielder as opposed to a City one, which sounds crazy, I know. In the forward spot, Muniz is another way that I could potentially get into that Fulham attack, but I would have to sell Solanke or Isak or make 2 transfers, which isn't something I want to do. And I am keeping my eye on Havertz. The fixtures aren't great coming up, but he was so impressive in game week 1. He had 5 shots in the box, which was the joint most. He's definitely someone on my watch list. But again, in future game weeks, I don't feel the need to make any of these moves this week. I'm relatively happy with my team. So switching back to it, this is the way the team looks for game week 2. As of right now, planning to roll a transfer. Let me know down below what you think of my team and let me know what your plans are as well. So guys, there you have it. That is my Game Week 2 team selection, transfer plans, and my current watch list too. Hopefully you did enjoy it, and if you did, please do smash that like button. And if you want to check out Fantasy Football Hub, please do so by clicking the links down below in the description. You can get a free team rating, or you can get 50% off to use all of their premium features as well. Until next time, thank you very much. Bye-bye.